Hello, hello, everybody. My name is Ben Soley. I'm the Director of Engagement at Canopy, a nonprofit based in Louisville, Kentucky that works to help businesses grow Kentucky businesses to have a positive impact on people, planet, and the future. And you are joining us for the Canopy Cafe, which we appreciate. This is a place, a space that we have created in an effort to kind of have the conversations that we missed having when people would stop by the office in our offices in Portland neighborhood of Louisville. And, people from all different types of industries and organizations would stop by and we'd have really great conversations, and we really missed those. So we thought we'd start up the Canopy Cafe here to have those in a remote and safe and healthy way. And we really intend these to be just casual conversations with entrepreneurs, business leaders, artists, people that are helping right now advise and lead with coaching and consulting through as companies try to grapple with and grow themselves through racial justice right now. And so we're so happy to be able to have this space. We just wrapped up the 27 campaign, which was 27 days of learning, where we asked and invited companies to commit to making change in their company and communities around racial justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we had a really amazing campaign. We had 26 companies participate, making public statements and committing to do better. And we also raised like $48,000 for Black business owners. So lots of good things going on there. And we can tell you more about that on our website, canopyky.org. Today on the show, we have Tytianna Wells, who is many things. She's an author, she's an entrepreneur, she's a publisher, and she's an educator, which she'll talk more about today. She owns Honey Tree Publishing, which puts out a lot of books and has a wonderful social mission that she'll tell you more about. And as usual, we have our Canopy CCP, Canopy Certification Program expert, Alex Page, joining us for highlights in good business. Hi, Alex.
Hi. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing good, living all the new norms.
Yeah, definitely.
What's going on in your world?
Not too much, other than I do have two really relevant good business news headlines for and so the first one, it's all about how purpose is considered a superpower now for businesses in the wake of the pandemic and the protests. There was an article that came out recently by Fast Company that talked about this. And so what exactly does this mean? Companies that have built a social or an environmental purpose into their bottom line are most likely to remain standing, according to this article, which we're definitely a fan of at Canopy. So this unprecedented time in our country will hopefully drive us toward like more meaningful and long overdue reform in critical areas like healthcare, civil rights, and the criminal justice system. But this pivotal point in time is also leading towards a shift in power towards purposeful brands, which is really cool. In normal times, it's fairly easy for companies to put on a good show when it comes to socially conscious behavior. Sometimes it's called greenwashing. But for a long time, there's been confusion among consumers when it comes to determining which companies have a true purpose versus the ones who are just really great at promoting it. But recent events have really turned things upside down and truly exposed whether a company's core values are as meaningful as they say. It's been hard enough for mission-centered brands to get it right during this time, but it's been nearly impossible for those who don't have any sort of social responsibility baked into their business model for them to get it right. And so if your company isn't built on purpose, it honestly probably hasn't performed super well during these times. And just like think about how hard it is to know how to do the right thing when your organization isn't really designed to do the right thing. Well,
and how to communicate that with customers and your employees right now. I mean, when there's so much uncertainty and, it's really just about trust during these times. Do people that are ordering with you online or doing curbside trust that you're being safe and healthy at work? Do people that are working for you trust that you're going to make sure that there's sanitation and cleanliness in those spaces? And, how are you making sure that's done in an equitable, transparent way? Are you making space for people to be able to report to leadership? So certainly the companies that maybe have been a little slow to incorporate a purpose into their business, whether or not they have a social or environmental mission, like a purpose into their business, are finding themselves playing catch up, it feels like, right?
Yes, definitely. And I think it really does boil down to trust, like you said. And that's what that purpose does for a business. So if you take a company like Amazon, for example, regardless of their efforts to do like all of the sustainability stuff that they've been trying to do. So like even like a recent announcement where they said that they were going to invest $2 billion into a climate pledge fund, like still the things that are making the headlines are centered on their failures and like how they've not been able to treat their employees well. So
yeah, and that's something we talk a lot about at Canopy, is the difference between corporate social responsibility, or environmental responsibility in this case, and actually a purpose-driven, triple bottom line, what we call good business, right? Where they operationalize their good. There's a really big difference between giving money to something and actually incorporating that good into your business model, which is something that you've done a lot of work with the certification program, right?
Yes, definitely. And I'd even say there's somewhere in between those two places where maybe a company is just starting out, like they really want to, put purpose into their business model, but can't be change that happens overnight unless you're a startup or something, and still it's in a very like malleable phase. So, respect the companies that are really trying to do the right things and go in the right direction and start incorporating those good practices rather than the ones that are just kind of trying to put a Band-Aid over the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always been a value of Canopy, is being an on-ramp to good business, right? Yeah. So there are some really great goals that are way, way up there that seem unattainable for some companies that maybe haven't built their company around that culture, but want to make that change, or find themselves in a place where their customers and employees are asking them to make that change. And they're like, how do I do it? Well, that's what Canopy's here for, is being an on-ramp for that. So really appreciate you bringing up these highlights in good business and all the good work that you're doing on the certification program.
Yeah, of course. And I have one more if you want me to talk about it real quick.
Would love it. Yeah, what's going on?
So it's actually an environmental headline, which is nice because we don't always hear about those things, or it seems like people are making more strides in the social space maybe than the environmental. But this one is huge, actually. Vermont has recently banned food waste and trash.
Wow.
Which may seem super radical or progressive, but it's not going to be officials going curbside and going from trash can to trash can and digging through the cans to make sure that they're not throwing away the food scraps that they could compost, but it's more of a voluntary initiative. So they recognize it's ambitious, but they believe that the state must take these precautions in order to achieve its goal of diverting 50% of all waste from landfills to facilities where it can be composted or recycled or reused. So like I said, it's going to be voluntary, and they honestly expect to get it based on how seriously people in Vermont care about environmentalism. So we'll see how it goes for Vermont, and maybe that'll serve as a model for the rest of the United States.
Absolutely. One more step towards a more circular economy, right?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Well, as always, really appreciate you, Alex, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
Bye. All right. Well, talking about social mission and businesses that have a purpose behind them, our guest on the Canopy Cafe today is a really wonderful example of that, both as a business owner and artist. She has a publishing company called Honey Tree Publishing, and she is also a performing spoken word artist and author, and we're so happy to have her on the Canopy Cafe. Let's please welcome Tytianna Wells. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Hi. How are you all doing?
You're all masked up. Where are you in the world?
I'm all masked up. I'm at Summer Works with my students at Youth Build in Louisville, Kentucky. Everybody say hey.
Hey.
They're working on a documentary right now on the Black Lives Matter movement, and they're doing different interviews, and this is actually going to be a part of the documentary. So it'll be a small segment just for us to tell the story about our conversations that we're having around race and around racism and equity and justice and peace and equality.
Yeah, well, and Summer Works, of course, is an internship program that is generally set up with the city of Louisville to get students involved in different organizations around town and different activities. And of course, everything's upside down right now with COVID. And so you've taken that opportunity to kind of innovate and make this documentary? Just tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so the documentary really is about the voice of the young people and the new millennials, and it really is an intergenerational story and narrative that needs to be told, which is why we're very intentional in the interviews that we're collecting in the community. We're going to the marches. This is our second day, actually, so we're going to be doing some jam sessions with some local musicians as well, and people who've been involved as artists as well as activists. And one of our young people actually named what she does as, she said, an artivist, which I thought was pretty amazing. So
what was it? The art of it?
An artivist.
An artivist. I love that.
So it's the intersectionality between artistry and activism. So I thought that was pretty amazing that she had mentioned that. Her name is Olivia, and excuse me. And she actually is an author, and we have a couple of authors here in the room too, but really just telling the story about being Black, being whatever your identity is during this particular time, during the pandemic, during this epidemic of the threat against Black lives that has been historical and systemic and institutional. So we just want to make sure that we are really addressing those issues that are pervasive, and they need to be addressed so that we can eradicate and come up with some solutions to these issues. So that's what our focus is on the documentary.
Yeah, well, we have to have those conversations, and they're not, particularly comfortable conversations to have, because so much of the success of our communities, our infrastructure, and businesses is built upon injustice, and it's not an equitable process, and not everybody has benefited from it. So, I'd be interested to hear from you and maybe your students, if they're comfortable sharing.
Absolutely.
What role do you think businesses play in racial justice?
I think a major pivotal key role. Businesses, our young people are entrepreneurs. We're creating. They're consumers as well, right? And they're going to be consumers, and they're going to be a part of these businesses. And I think that if you're providing a product, that product has to speak to the people. The people are the product. Just like when you're in school, they come up with all these standards, right? And this mission statement. But who is the standard, and what is the standard? Is the standard the child? Is the standard the student? And so really speaking, your vision should really reflect the voice of the people. Yeah. And it should reflect the equity that should be dispersed among the people. And so, just thinking about, how to create, an opportunity to have those conversations around vision. Everybody needs to be a part of that conversation. So in a boardroom, it needs to be a diverse boardroom. That's why I'm working on my doctorate now, is so that I can be a voice for the people. I can be the voice for my community, for the African-American community, for the Creole community, for the Native American community. So I'm speaking from different communities, and I want to make sure that we have an equal stand and space in those areas where many times they're predominantly white. And so we want to be able to have those conversations. But in order to have those conversations, you got to have the people at the table. You got to bring them to the conversation. And we have to be able to be there too. And so education is very important. Advocacy is very important. Being able to be true to, and you were talking about that earlier, being true to your story, it's going to make you uncomfortable to talk about race. It's an uncomfortable conversation. It really is. Everybody feels uncomfortable. But in order to grow, and that's what I tell my young people, this is our second day, but we've already had some really intense conversations, is that you have to be willing to be vulnerable, and you have to be willing to tell your truth, right? And you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And that's going to many times make you feel, I don't know if I'm ready for this. When is the time then? The time is right now. People are dying. People's lives are being taken. And nobody wants anybody in their family or themselves to be a hashtag. Yeah. So we want to make sure that in every space that we're talking about race, and we're talking about the issues that are going on, in our communities, that's going on in our world, that's international, that's global, but that's urgent, that's timely. And so to have those critical conversations does require you to, be honest with how you're feeling, self-evaluation, self-reflection, tracking how you're feeling, and being able to articulate that, in a way that allows somebody to know, and to be honest about, I don't understand what this is. Can you please let me know, what's going on. And really, there was an article that I had recently read, and it was talking about, and I even talked to my aunt about this. She's a nurse, and she told me, she said, in my field, some of the white nurses, they come to me and they're like, I don't understand, how are you feeling? And she said, this is not my job to explain to you,
Right.
what the turmoil, the trauma that I'm going through every day as a Black woman, and so, but how do you create a space and navigate those spaces to have those conversations? And it's really about just being honest with what we are dealing with, sitting down, coming to the table, being intentional and strategic around, not only are we talking about our emotions, and even if you feel as though you're overwhelmed by it, you're getting upset about it, you're getting emotional, check your emotions, be understanding of your emotions and where you are, and be able to kind of see, okay, I do feel this particular way, but I'm still gonna, my mind wants me to turn that person off. Sometimes we turn people off,
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean, because it makes us feel uncomfortable. Or you start, we physically sometimes, based off of your phenotype, you can see when somebody is feeling a little,
Oh, yeah.
they're getting flustered, you know what I mean? So you want to be able to have those conversations and to discuss that, and to know that, what, you're feeling this way. Tell me how you're feeling, what's going on. This is my perspective, and just really laying it all out, putting it all out on the table, because
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of sweeping up under the rug, and it hasn't gotten us anywhere. So being honest about that, the self-evaluation, being strategic, and how do you implement those solutions throughout your business strategies, throughout your business plan, being able to talk about and talk through, what are some of the next steps, what are some ways that we can help improve our interactions, our relationships with one another. How
Yeah.
can we build products that really speak to what the people want and need and deserve, because everybody is deserving and worthy.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves equity and equality and justice and peace. Everyone does.
Yeah.
And so we need to talk through that and what that would look like. And it might require, a rebuilding of the infrastructure, a rethinking of the infrastructure, a reflection of the infrastructure, so that we can get to nipping the root, nipping the problem at its root, and coming
Right.
up with some solutions so that we can grow the business, because we want the business to be a reflection of the people and their needs and their wants, and how we want to grow as a nation, as in this world, as a people.
Yeah, certainly. And, we're talking about a lot of what are called soft skills here, right? Like being
Yes.
vulnerable, listening, sharing, being in a space where when conflicts arise, you can have a high degree of empathy and compassion for that person's perspective, whether they be your employee, if you're in leadership
Yes.
of the company, or if you're in an employee company and talking to a leader and understanding that they're not maybe where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of uncomfortable conversations are happening all over the world at every scale of companies, and especially here in the United States, companies are really grappling with it. So,
Yes.
what are some tools or some prompts and questions that you might ask in a boardroom setting that would help facilitate these sorts of conversations?
Yeah, I would ask, let's talk through where you're coming from. Where are you from? I think having many times just those general prompts of, where are you from? Let's talk through, your upbringing, because really you want to know your employees, you want to know the people who you're working with. So in order to really kind of get to nip at some of the, hidden microaggressions, or,
Yeah.
racism, racist beliefs, that kind of thing. You want to kind of just talk through, well, tell me a little bit about what your background is, what community do you come from? I mean, really, it's just having a conversation so that you are building a relationship. I mean, it's all about relationship and being able to, there's the relationship piece, and then there's the communication piece, being able to speak the language of the people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being able to speak that language. So asking them questions around, where are you from? Like, let's talk through, what are some areas that you want to learn more about? Because like I said, it's education. It's about education and educating, your employees, because a lot of times people, there's this ignorance many times that some people do have. They don't understand, they don't know, you know what I mean? And it's not a negative thing. Sometimes people just don't know, right? Or they don't recognize they don't recognize the type of privileges that they may have, right? And some people don't. And so being able to really talk through that, to talk about the the education piece, being able to bring in, let's bring in somebody who's an expert in, history and Black history, and talk about, what's been the conversation around Black people in America, over the course of the antebellum era to today, so just kind of thinking about that. So, and then making those connections across, the different eras, and how a lot of things have not changed. So really talking about it from not only a personal standpoint, which can be a variety of different ways. I highly do not recommend simulations because many times those are very, very traumatizing and counterproductive. So I don't recommend those. Like when sometimes people do like, let's go into, sometimes they'll have like in museums where you go into a dungeon and they're like, okay, this is what it was like. And it's like, okay, we don't need any more trauma. You know what I mean? Especially for certain spaces, it's okay for depending on the educational strategy for that. But in that corporate setting, in that business setting, it needs to be, sorry, my sinuses are just acting up.
You're good. It's allergies everywhere. You're good.
I know. It's like, oh my gosh, my sinuses. But you want to be able to really just have natural conversations, organic conversations that's going to speak to what's going on, the context of our world, police brutality, the racism, right? The lack of curriculum. Like really everybody has their own curriculum, right? The cultural responsive curriculum needs to be implemented in every infrastructure. So whatever, I know a lot of people, they call it curriculum. There are different names for their strategic model, right?
Right.
And their business plan. But just kind of thinking about, how to create a culturally responsive model that really manifests and can be articulated across all the different programs that the business is providing. So whatever those components are in that business, you can, really speak to it from a cultural standpoint, from a people standpoint. So, Django Parrish, she talks about that. There's a lot of different educators, a lot of different academics. There are a lot of different books out there. Dr. Michelle Alexander, her book is really amazing. She actually wrote a book called The Mass Incarceration, New Age Jim Crow, The Mass Incarceration. And I'm actually looking at it here. The Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. I actually did a book review and a book discussion kit for her book that she ended up implementing with her book. So it's actually available if you were to go online. There's so many different resources out there to kind of help add to the education piece of the various strategies that you want to implement. And really, it can be just a book that you bring up. You have those relationship conversations about relationships that are personal, but you're also talking about, books, bringing in literature, bringing in TED Talks to start those conversations. I mean, just as simple as that. And it's interactive, and it gets people able to, feeling comfortable to talk about how they're feeling, what their thoughts are, how they've been a part of, their times. But, for example, there's an anonymous activity that I've done with as a JCPS educator, working with doing professional developments for teachers. So I've done this activity. There are a variety of different ones, but there's one in particular, and it's basically with sticky notes. And this might be something that a lot of people who are watching may be interested in actually, implementing into what they do at their jobs and in their businesses. But you write down anonymously, how you're feeling. So basically, there might be a question like, what are some when was a time when you experienced a microaggression, or when was a time when you were discriminated against, right? It can just be something as simple as that. When was the first time that you knew that you were realize your race, right? It's just kind of coming up with some questions, some thought-provoking questions to kind of start to generate the conversation around, those uncanny, many times, taboo, critical conversations that people many times, they call them taboo, they call them critical, they call them controversial, but you have those conversations and you can have them anonymously, which is the great thing. So basically you'd write down your answer. Everybody gets a few minutes to write their answer down on the sticky note without their name. Right. The facilitator collects all of the sticky notes. You put it up on the wall, and then we have everybody walks across the wall to see, walks along the wall to see what the responses are. And then you facilitate a conversation. Nobody's name is attached to it, Right. But you start to generate, a conversation around race and around discrimination and just around the importance of these kind of conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's a great tool for viewers to be able to use maybe as a starting place or a stepping stone. As a facilitator and kind of thinker, you do a lot of work helping with this stuff. You're also a business owner. You own Honey Tree Publishing, which is a publishing company with a social mission. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So we focus on providing books of young people of color, because there's a very limited number, less than 2% of books actually have people of color in them. And so we want to really increase that number. And with my publishing company, we're helping to increase those numbers. A lot of our books that do have people of color, most of them are from small publishing companies. And so, we want to be able to provide and speak to, there's a gap, right, with the large publishing companies. A lot of those publishing companies are traditional publishing companies. They come from a selective tradition, and they come from a tradition where it was predominantly white, which explains why there's only, 2% of those books that exist out there.
Right.
So the number is increasing. It's increasing very little by little, but it is increasing. But my publishing company does provide a literature base, for people of color to see themselves in books, because it's very important to have representation in every space, including in your books and in your research, in your literature that you're providing. Yeah. So that's something that I always wanted to be a part of, that I wanted to add and make a contribution to. I've always loved to write, and I knew that there were limited books when I was growing up, and I wanted to change that. So with my publishing company, I'm able to bring books of, that focus on the Black experience throughout the diaspora, because I have books about people of African descent and African heritage all across the world. And I also have I have not only people of color, but I have white people in my books as well. So if you look through some of the illustrations that I've illustrated through some of my stories, especially my children's books, you'll see that there are a variety of different, cultural backgrounds that are represented, because I want to make sure that people know that we're all a family. We're all one. We all deserve, like I said, life, longevity. We deserve to survive and to thrive. And I want to be able to really express the beauty behind the Black community and the Black family, and the inspirational stories that many times aren't told but deserve to be told, and they deserve to be a part of the larger grand narrative.
So you self-publish your own work through Honey Tree, and then you also work with other authors.
I do, yes. So I actually, I do consultations. I have a book writing and publishing consultation packages, and that allows me to work with young or anybody who's working on their book. And excuse me. Ooh, I need some water. But
you can take a break, get some water.
I should have thought about. Yes, I should have did that. But I'm working with all types of people right now. I published a young woman. Her name is Dr. Angel Jackson. She published a book and she did a memoir. And I work with a lot of different other authors. I work with another young man. He owns his own business. He's a Black entrepreneur. His name is Dr. Curtis Nelson, and he's publishing his book in the next couple of months. And then I'm working with a host of other people who are interested in just getting their story out there, And if you're interested in learning more about our packages and services and programs, I have educational programs as well, where I go to different schools and I do different, creative writing programs. We work on documentaries. I work with reading. We have a reading storytime program. I have a YouTube storytime program where my characters from Sweet Pea and Sugar Tea's Country Family Adventures, they come to life. So I'm interacting with Uncle Chuckle, and I'm at his barbershop sitting in his chair, and Big Mama's walking by. So I have all kind of just different characters, and they come to life. So it makes it more interactive too for the kids who, love to see the animation.
Right. And it's just so amazing to have so many facets to the work that you do. And it's very contemporary in that way, right? Like,
thank you.
Got all these hustles going on. That's very entrepreneurial. That's like,
thank you.
When people talk about the aspects that make successful entrepreneurs, that's exactly what they're talking about, is, kind of a holistic approach to how you're going to not only just make the product, but how you're going to connect that product with people that you care about, and people that can care about your product. So, I think that's really fantastic, and definitely encourage folks watching to keep in touch through Honeytree Publishing. Wait, where'd it go? There it is. Through honeytreepublishingus.com. That's where you can get in touch, not only for the books that she's publishing and poetry, but also get in touch about facilitating and helping start and facilitate those difficult conversations. So as you mentioned, as an educator, you're busy right now with Summer Works program. You got your students behind you. If any of them are interested and willing and sharing about how they're feeling right now, and particularly how they feel businesses should be taking action right now, I would be really curious to hear that. And I know that our audience would be as well. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if you all have anything that you want to share about what your perspective is right now as you're writing, thinking about a documentary, like what should businesses be doing to speak to you all? Go for it.
Yeah, come on up. Here, go ahead and sit.
My name is Sierra Harris. I'm 16, and I feel like businesses, in order to speak to me, they should show that they really care. And instead of saying, we support Black Lives Matter, they should show that they support Black lives actually. A lot of people, for instance, fashion designers saying, well, how come we don't have a lot of Black employees? And it's like, well, you're responsible for that. And I want them to show that they actually care instead of just saying it, so they can get more Black customers on their side.
So for you, representation is really important. That's a value. Like a business, if they care about Black lives, they should hire Black people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of just asking why aren't there any more Black employees, they should hire those Black employees.
Yep. So go ahead. Sorry.
And I think an example of a brand that did good with that was NASCAR, and them banning Confederate flags and really showing their support for I forgot his name, but the Black race car driver, and showing that they're on his side and on Black people's side, even though, there aren't a lot of Black consumers for NASCAR. I don't think majority of PC is white consumers. They still show their support for Black people.
Right. And as Bubba Wallace pointed out, even though the president said that the ratings were bad, the ratings are actually higher than they've ever been for NASCAR. And that's because NASCAR has made the morally just choice, but also the business choice of saying we're going to support our drivers regardless of their race, and especially support our Black driver right now who's going through a lot. And I think it's really encouraging to hear that meant something to you. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything to share about what you think businesses should be doing right now? I see a hand in the back.
Come on up. Oh, hello. I'm Aaliyah. I'm 17. And, I think that what businesses should do is, they should do representation. They should do everything what she said. But I mean, I mean, if anything, I really don't know how to explain this while looking terrible. But there's this video that I watched about Wall-E, and it talked about how corporate people look at the people, and if they see that, oh, green is good, then they'll change things. Like, what the thing is, we ultimately, businesses need to watch at the people and adapt as things go on. Now, they should do everything. But if a business is not getting profits, and while still being, even though they do even if the business is doing all that it can to help people, if it's not getting enough profit, it's gonna shut down. Now, I'm not saying that they should keep doing the status quo, like they should keep doing what they're doing, but they shouldn't go out of business either. It's a fine line, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you bring that up, because a lot of people that are watching or might hear this conversation later in the archive version will be business owners that say, yeah, I understand I need to take action. I understand that racial justice is a systemic problem, and I'm playing a role in it right now, but I'm busy, or I need to be able to make money, or COVID-19 has already crushed my capital. Like, I need to survive to do all this. And I think they would really resonate with what you said. And I think that now is a time right now where a lot of businesses, because they're struggling so much, are retooling. They're tilling the ground. They're reinvesting in different platforms and business models. A lot of them that let go of people are rehiring. And as they're rehiring, they're trying to think like, gosh, how can I be more just? How can I be more inclusive and diverse? So as they're doing that, I think it's important to listen to folks like you all, the youth. And I think it's important to really be intentional about it for the long term. That's one of the things that we're helping companies do right now, is guide them through that process and really be thoughtful about your diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not just the policies, but the actions, right? So important. Anybody else got something to share?
Yes, we have one more.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Savion Briggs, and just a point that I wanted to bring up is that in these corporate meetings, or any type of forms of board meetings, I feel like the question need to be asked to the people around. I wouldn't even say to better understand, to better paint this picture. Is to ask, like, when is the first time, as the employees when did they realize that racism was real? Because we can go through this process and we can talk about this experience that we had, but until we find the core problem, or ask that core question of when do you first realize racism? When did you first understand white privilege? It's like these simple questions that put you in that uncomfortable space that we can actually start making progress. Because until those questions are asked, it will be no progress, because you wouldn't understand what's going on, or you wouldn't even begin to understand, because until you realize where you've seen it in your life. Because I know personally, I noticed it in kindergarten at a young age. And if everybody realized, like, when they actually realize racism, or realize that you have the white privilege, or realize that you had the upper hand in life, or anything of that sort, that's when you can actually start making progress.
Interesting. So making sure that it's personalized, like it means something to them personally, white privilege, or means something to them personally, racism. And how would you encourage them to share that with each other?
Just like in this sense of, we're all sitting down at this round table, ask that question. Go one by one. When is the first time that you realized racism was real and it affected you? Or affected someone around you, or just witnessed it? When is the first time that you felt uncomfortable, in a sense? Like, them types of questions like that, just to kind of activate that I guess that that thought process in your head, to understand that these are things that happen. These are things that I've probably been avoiding. These are things that's probably happening around me that I haven't even took the time to actually see. Like, if you just sit back and stop for a moment, and you start moving so fast, you can actually notice what's happening around you, and you can actually start to make change around you, which it'll become a bigger change.
That's really powerful. I'm glad that you shared that, because it also takes a pretty sophisticated forward stance. It doesn't ask, does racism exist? It doesn't start the conversation way back there. It starts the conversation at racism exists, white privilege exists. How are you? What is your role in it? And that's a powerful place to start from if you're leading a company, right? If you're on the board of a company or an organization, starting the conversation there is so important and really powerful. And it's really good, I hope, for folks watching to hear that from a young Black man sharing that here on this platform, because that's the kind of change that we need right now. And it's so great to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I have a list of questions that I don't know if they can send them or post them anyway that can like start the conversation, because I know it's probably hard for you guys to even write up the questions. So I have personally a list of questions that can be asked when you guys are in that situation or in these meetings or just in that environment.
That's great. Yeah, please share them.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, you all. I appreciate you.
No problem.
Yeah. So we've been talking with Tytianna Wells, author, publisher, educator, who is on her second day with Summer Works program here in Louisville, working on a documentary project. And we're so happy that you've taken this much time. I don't want to steal any more time from you and your students, but as folks wrap up, I mean, what do you think are the opportunities ahead? I mean, we're in a global pandemic. We're grappling with systemic racial injustice. What are the opportunities as you see them for businesses going forward? Did you catch me, or did I get muted?
Are you talking to me, or are you talking to?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were. I thought you were waiting for somebody to call in. I'm sorry. Say that again.
You never know in the internet world that we're in. You never know.
Right. I thought you were waiting for somebody else to call in. Say that again. I'm sorry.
No, I was just curious. As a matter of wrapping up a little bit, I wanted to say to get your thoughts on, in the context of a global pandemic,
yeah,
all the challenges that's bringing right now for businesses, as well as businesses grappling with racial injustice and systemic problems with that. What do you feel like the opportunities are right now for businesses?
I feel like the opportunities are enormous. I mean, really, it's about meeting people where they are, meeting their needs. And that's something that businesses always talk about. That's the first thing that we need to do is we need to meet the people's needs. And so right now we know that their needs is focused on health. It's focused on holistic health. And so when you think about it from a holistic perspective, you're not only tackling whatever your product is providing to the people, but you're also tackling the health, the mental health component, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the actual materializing your mission. And so I think that, being able to really just have conversations right now, doing things new and differently, these are nuanced times that we're in. And we need to really, just be able to come up with new strategies, that really meets the people's needs. So if the people are, obviously we know that race is a big issue. Racism is a big issue. We know that people are not feeling as though, sometimes going in certain businesses, you don't feel welcome. You don't feel as though you want to even, you don't feel like you should, you just feel animosity when you walk in. I mean, I had a cousin, and we have video footage of him getting trampled by the police. They said that he had stole something. He didn't steal anything. He was with his children and everything. And the kid my little cousins were traumatized by that, to see their father getting trampled. This was a couple of months ago, by the police, blood all over. I mean, it was terrible. Everybody was watching. They pulled their phones out, and it was unnecessary. So really, really just being able to just talk through what all this means to your business, and how to really talk about what needs to change from a holistic perspective, and what your contribution is going to be as a business to helping to alleviate these ills that we're dealing with right now, because right now is grieving. And our businesses, everybody, is hurting from this pandemic, from this racial epidemic, from all of these isms that we're dealing with, and now it's this is a human rights issue here, and everybody is a part of the conversation. So we need everybody that's going to be on board and talk about this, and make sure that we're doing a needs assessment that's focusing on really what the people need and what they deserve.
So the opportunity for businesses sounds like is really a moral one, to move the needle on justice.
Absolutely.
And also to focus on what folks need and make a welcoming and safe place for the Black community.
Absolutely.
That's not just a moral opportunity, that's a business opportunity.
Yes, it is.
Aligning your purpose with making everyone feel welcome, especially the Black community, is a great way to earn new customers. So
absolutely,
really
it's about diversity and inclusivity. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that starts, as your students pointed out, with making sure that your representation, the folks that are working in your company, and especially in your leadership, represent the Black population. And
absolutely,
that's something that we're hearing loud and clear from every part of the community, and most especially youth. So it's a powerful way to transform things. Well, Tytianna, I appreciate your time and all your wonderful thoughts and energy here on the Canopy Cafe. If folks want to stay in touch, they can reach you through honeytreepublishingus.com.
Yes.
The social medias, of course. And thank you so much for joining us. I hope we can talk soon.
Awesome. And then let me know too, if you ever want me to do a poem or anything to kind of represent what we're doing, what we're going through right now, let me know.
Oh, we'd love that. Maybe I can leverage my musical skills and we can make something together.
That sounds good.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks for watching. This is a little bit extended edition of the Canopy Cafe, but these are important conversations to have. And Tytianna is, as an author and publisher and entrepreneur, she is facilitating those conversations around Louisville and really just around the region. So I encourage you to get in touch with her. If you want to learn more about how you can anchor and grow your diversity, equity, inclusion in your companies, and how Canopy certification program might be able to help with that, you can find us at canopyky.org. We just wrapped up the 27 campaign, where we had companies committing to greater diversity, equity, and inclusion. We had 26 companies sign on as part of the campaign, raising about $48,000 in matching and donated funds to support Black businesses. If you don't have a business, but you're an individual and you want to just show support for the movement, Canopy has some really cool t-shirts with our tagline, "Good business is anti-racist." It's not enough anymore to say we're not racist. It's important to be actively anti-racist, as we've learned in the process of these conversations. So you can get those at canopyky.org as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back in your feed on Thursday for a conversation with BioGlitz, a biodegradable glitter company based out of Louisville area and New York, talking about environmental impact. So hopefully you can join us. Thank you so much. Make sure to follow us on the social medias, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all those things. That's the best way to find out about the good business movement in Kentucky. Thank you all so much. Talk to you next time.